So, Mass Effect Andromeda. This game came out last year. Yeah, this was one of the most disappointing games that has come out this console generation. There was a big controversy for when this game came out, due to the fact that BioWare didn't finish the game. They were on a time crunch and several things went wrong during the game's development. But I don't give a fuck about that shit. They knew what they had to do and shit. It's when you develop a fucking video game and you work at a company, you know you're on a fucking time crunch. You know you have to deliver and please the fans and shit. So I really don't give a fuck what went wrong during the game's development. The fact is, the game was released and there were glitches, there were issues with the animation, there were issues with the polish of the overall game. And that's really what sparked the controversy. Now, you know, a lot of people were saying, you know, the game is terrible, the game is awful. You know, it's not. This game isn't a fucking terrible game, but it's not that far from it. It's definitely a very disappointing game, because Mass Effect 2 is actually in my top 10 favorite video games of all time list. That game is one of the best RPGs ever created. I fucking love Mass Effect 2. Mass Effect 3 is also a great game as well, aside from the ending. So this game had a lot to live up to, and it just failed to deliver pretty much, you know, across the board. And this game didn't review very well either. It got like very, you know, mediocre scores and all that shit. So some of the things that went wrong with this game, first of all, the story and the characters and shit. None of the characters are really likable or interesting. And, you know, you don't really have to have a likable character. I mean, you know, Mass Effect 2 had, unlikable characters. But they were written well, and they were, the actors performed them, you know, to a degree to where you could connect with them. A character doesn't have to be likable, but they do have to be written to where you feel like, you know, they have a purpose for actually being there in the story and shit. And none of the characters really accomplished that in this game. The story, as a result of that, is not interesting. The main villain or whatever, I can't even remember what the fuck the motherfucker's name was. I can't remember his motivation or what the fuck he was trying to accomplish. But yeah, it's not interesting. Like, before this game came out, you know, BioWare was making all these promises of making a bigger Mass Effect game. And they did that, but they did it in the wrong way. There's essentially like 5 locations that you can go to in the game. The whole thing of, you know, exploring the galaxy and going to all these different planets and shit, all that shit's garbage. Most of the planets that are in the game you can't actually go to. There's only like 5 locations that you can actually venture to in the game. The planets that they actually have in the game, they're just these big open world like locations. They're extremely boring to venture through, because you have to take this vehicle or whatever, and you have to drive through the game's environment. It's not fun. It's very boring, actually. One of the things that I really hated about this game was the fact that they did something that The Witcher 3 did, which, you know, The Witcher 3 is a fucking overrated ass game too. I fucking hate that game. They fucking, like, they pulled a Witcher 3 where they stuffed the game with a bunch of side missions and shit. Game developers have gotten, like, fucking retarded this console generation. You know, I just don't understand. They think that just because you stuff the fucking game, you know, you stuff your fucking game with a bunch of side missions and shit, that somehow, you know, that's gonna not only give the player their money's worth in terms of content, but also, you know, that's gonna you know, extend the game's life and you know, give the, you know, your audience a lot to do. No, the only thing that does is piss me off, because it's like just stuffing your game with a bunch of meaningless, boring ass side quests isn't gonna make the game fun. If anything, it's gonna make it boring, it's gonna make it repetitive, and it's just gonna make it tedious, the playthrough, and more than likely I'm just gonna stop playing your fucking game. It got to a point, actually, that I forced myself to fucking play through the game, because I wanted to see, you know, the end of the game and where the game was going. As it turns out, I wasted my time. The game really doesn't go anywhere. Story-wise, it's a very disappointing ending. The game has a very disappointing ending. It's kind of left open-ended, because, you know, this is Mass Effect. You know, this is an established franchise. They expected to make more. The only thing they did was, in the end, actually was, you know, ironically, was damage the franchise permanently, to the point where now Mass Effect is on a fucking hiatus because of this one fucking game right here. And it kind of pisses me off because, you know, Mass Effect was one of the best fucking, you know, RPG franchises, and now no one knows what's going to happen to the series now after this game. I'm going to talk about the main characters, the Ryder twins or whatever. That was also a huge missed opportunity, because one of the Ryder twins, depending on who, like depending on if you choose to play as the male Ryder or the female Ryder, the other sibling, the other twin, remains like comatose throughout pretty much the entire game, which is a huge missed opportunity. Ryder is nowhere near as interesting as Shepard was in the original Mass Effect trilogy. The character's not written as well. Like it's one of those things where they really just, you know, they could have had the Ryder siblings, you know, working together in the game. They didn't really go that direction with it. And I just don't understand why. Like, why'd you choose to have the main character to be like this twin and have these siblings in the game if they weren't going to work together? As far as the combat goes, that's the best part of the game. There's a lot of cool powers and whatnot that you can use, and the combat system encourages you to move around and shit. Even that kind of loses the point of what Mass Effect became, which is this third-person, you know, cover shooter. And it was a really good third-person cover shooter. And so, you know, I kind of prefer that over, you know, jumping around all over the place and using all these different, you know, powers and shit. Yeah, it's just a weak ass game across the board. The enemies in the game are repetitive as fuck. They don't have a lot of different enemy types in the game, so you'll run into the same fucking enemies over and over and over and over and over again. If you try and do what I did and try and complete the game to 100%, you know, all the side missions and shit, the game will waste your fucking time. It's around fucking, this game's around, 70 plus hours long. Most of what you do in the game is repetitive. You do the same shit, you know, you'll accept a mission, you'll go back to your fucking spaceship or whatever the fuck that thing was called, you'll accept the mission. You'll get on the fucking spaceship. You'll have to fly or, you know, travel to the planet where the mission actually takes place. You'll have to sit through, you know, a few fucking loading screens and all this shit. And it's just boring. It's just a boring ass game, long ass game that just wastes your fucking time. This is not why I love Mass Effect. This isn't the reason why I became a fan of the series, you know, since the very first game came out back in 2007. Yeah, this was not only a huge missed opportunity, this was a game, like I said, that permanently damaged the franchise. And now, you know, no one knows what's going to happen to Mass Effect. And to be honest, they did such a bad job that I would actually not be upset if they just ended the series and not made another fucking game. So, you know, nothing like this could potentially ever happen again. Yeah, Mass Effect Andromeda is one of the worst, one of the most disappointing games to come out during the 8th console generation. Yeah, it just sucks. It's not a good game. So, yeah, good job, BioWare.